Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening a file on a man who is simultaneously one of the most famous figures in history and, well, a complete ghost. You know the name. You probably learned it in, what, fourth grade. He's the guy on the postage stamp.
The man who found North America for the English. That's the one.
Exactly. John Cabot, 1497. New World, end of story. But as I was reading through the stack of research you sent over for this, the letters, the custom rolls, the chronicles, I realized that almost everything I thought I knew about this guy was just, it was two-dimensional.
Oh, absolutely.
The reality is, what's messier? And frankly, it's so much more interesting. We're talking about a man who was a fugitive from debt, a failed civil engineer.
And potentially a bit of a con artist.
Yeah.
He was certainly a hustler. And you're right, the textbook version of Cabot is incredibly sanitized. When you dig into the primary sources like the John Day letter or the recent work by the Cabot Project at the University of Bristol, you find a figure who is just, he's desperate, he's ambitious, and he's operating in this world of high-stakes industrial espionage.
And that's our mission today. We are going to look past the statue in the park and try to find the real human being. We need to talk about his real name, his money problems, and a massive historical mystery.
The mystery.
A mystery involving a historian who spent 35 years studying him and then destroyed her own work.
That story about Olin Ruddock is, it's truly one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in modern academia. We'll definitely get there.
But let's start with the basics. The name. We call him John Cabot, but that wasn't his name, was it?
No, not at all. If you walked up to him in 1390 and shouted John, he probably wouldn't have turned around. In the Italian records, he is Giovanni Caboto. In the Venetian dialect, he actually signed his own name, Zuan Caboto.
Zuan, Z-U-A-N.
Exactly. And later, when he's trying to, hustle up work in Spain, he shows up in the documents as John Cabot Montecalugna.
Montecalugna. That sounds like he's trying to sound like nobility or something.
Or at least trying to blend in. And this brings up a key insight about the era. Identity in the 15th century was fluid, especially for a merchant.
Okay.
There was a European tradition of nativizing names. It's the same reason we might call a historical figure named Jacques James in English history books, or why Charles becomes Karl in German.
So he wasn't necessarily hiding his identity. He was just marketing himself.
Exactly. He was a chameleon. When he was in Venice, he was Zuan. When he dealt with his Italian banker in London, his banker called him Giovanni. And then when he was petitioning the King of England, he became John. He became whoever he needed to be to close the deal.
So let's look at where Zuan came from. We know he was born around 1450, maybe in Genoa or Gaeta. But the paper trail really starts when he becomes a citizen of Venice in 1476.
Right.
Now, in your notes, you flagged this as a massive deal. Why? I mean, today's citizenship is just a passport.
It was so much more than a passport back then. In 15th century Venice, citizenship was a commercial license. It was an exclusive club.
So not just a piece of paper.
Not at all. To get full citizenship, you had to prove you had lived in the city for 15 years. That is a very, very high bar for an outsider.
For 15 years.
Just to get the paperwork. 15 years of residency. And the reason you would do that, the return on that investment, was that only citizens could engage in the maritime trade with the East.
Ah, okay.
If you weren't a citizen, you couldn't captain a ship to Alexandria or Beirut to pick up spices. You were just shut out of the most lucrative trade on the planet.
So by getting that citizenship, he wasn't just saying, I love Venice. He was getting his union card. He was.
Yeah.
He was entering the big leagues.
Precisely. He was trading in silks, spices, gems, all the goods that made Venice the richest city in Europe, and we have proof he was there. There is a document from 1483, a receipt, essentially, that places him in Crete.
And this is where we see the grim reality of the time, though. He wasn't just selling nutmeg.
No. The document records him selling an enslaved woman.
Wow.
He had acquired her while he was in the territories of the Sultan of Egypt.
Which would be modern-day Israel, Syria, Lebanon, that sort of area.
That region, yes. And this is important for understanding his mindset. He later claimed to the Milanese ambassador that he had been all the way to Mecca.
To Mecca?
Now, we can't verify if he actually set foot in Mecca, but we know he was embedded in that eastern supply chain. He saw the caravans coming in.
He saw the goods arriving from the Silk Road.
Right. He understood the geography of value. He knew that the spices were coming from somewhere far, far to the east, and they were traveling this long, expensive overland route. He realized that if someone could cut out the middlemen,
The caravans, the taxes.
cut out all of it, they would make an absolute fortune.
So he's basically a supply chain expert. He
Yeah.
sees the inefficiency in the market.
Yep.
But then the bottom falls out. We think of these explorers as noble adventurers, but Cabot leaves Venice in 1488 because he's broke.
Broke is putting it mildly. He was insolvent. The hustle had failed.
The date is November 5, 1488. He leaves Venice. And he doesn't just leave, he flees.
He had to. His creditors were absolutely furious. They had filed what was called a lettera di raccomandazione a giustizia.
Okay, what's that?
In English, that's a recommendation to justice. It was basically an order to the authorities to find this man, arrest him, and throw him in prison until he paid up.
So the great John Cabot, the hero of the British Empire, started his career as a fugitive running from debt collectors.
It completely changes how you view him, doesn't it? This wasn't just curiosity driving him. It was pure desperation. He couldn't go home. He needed a new patron. He needed a big win to wipe the slate clean and restore his status.
So where does a bankrupt Venetian merchant go to reinvent himself? Naturally, he goes to Spain. This is the 1490s. Columbus is there. The Portuguese are active. But here's the curveball. He doesn't go there to sail.
No.
He goes there to build stuff.
This is a fascinating detour that usually gets left out of the history books. He shows up in Valencia, and he's pitching himself as a civil engineer.
An engineer.
A civil engineer, yes. He proposes this plan to improve the harbor there.
And how did that go for him?
They rejected him flat out. So he moves on. He goes to Seville in 1494. And this time, he actually gets a contract. He is hired to build a stone bridge over the Guadalquivir River.
I'm just picturing this spice merchant standing on a riverbank in Seville, holding a blueprint, trying to tell stonemasons how to build a bridge. I mean, did he even know how to build a bridge?
The evidence suggests probably not. The project was a complete disaster. It lasted 5 months before the city council realized nothing was happening, and they cut his funding.
So he's 0 for 2 in Spain. He's failed at trade. He's failed at engineering.
And he's running out of time. You have to remember, he's in Seville and Lisbon during the exact moment Christopher Columbus is getting his funding and setting sail.
Right, the timing is critical.
Cabot was likely pitching his own Atlantic voyage to the Spanish and Portuguese crowns, but he was late to the party. Spain had Columbus. Portugal had their route around Africa. There was just no room for a Venetian with a bad credit rating.
So he looks north. He realizes if the south is taken, he has to try England. He arrives in Bristol around 1495. Now, for the listener who might not know 15th century English geography, why Bristol? Why not London?
London was the political capital, sure, but Bristol was the Silicon Valley of exploration. It was the second largest seaport in England, and it was facing west, right into the Atlantic.
Right.
But more importantly, the merchants there were obsessed with a legend. The legend of Hy Brasil.
Hy Brasil. It sounds like the country in South America, but it's different, right?
Completely different. Hy Brasil was a mythical island from Celtic folklore.
Yep.
It was supposed to be somewhere out in the Atlantic, shrouded in mist.
A ghost island.
Pretty much. But the Bristol merchants didn't think it was a fairy tale. They thought it was a commercial opportunity.
What were they looking for on this mythical island?
Brazil wood. It's a type of wood that produces a very, very valuable red dye. In the textile industry of the time, red dye was liquid gold. Since about 1480, Bristol merchants had been sending ships out into the Atlantic looking for this island.
And this brings us to one of the most controversial and exciting parts of your research notes.
Yeah.
We mentioned the historian Alwyn Ruddock earlier. She had a theory that just blows the timeline of discovery wide open.
Oh, yeah.
She believed the Bristol sailors didn't just look for the island. She believed they found North America before Cabot.
This is the pre-discovery theory. It's huge. Ruddock claimed she found evidence in the Italian archives that Bristol merchants had reached the New World, probably Newfoundland, sometime before 1470.
Before 1470. That's more than 20 years before Columbus.
Exactly. More than 20 years.
That is wild. But if they found it, why didn't they claim it? Why didn't they put it on a map? Why keep it a secret?
Because they were merchants, not glory hunters. If you find a massive untapped fishing ground or a new source of timber, the last thing you want to do is announce it.
You want to keep it to yourself.
You want to keep it a trade secret. You don't want the French or the Spanish or, frankly, your own king to know about it and start taxing it.
So Cabot arrives in Bristol in 1495, pitching a voyage to Asia via the west. And he walks into a community that might be sitting there thinking, well, we know there's land out there. Let's see what this Italian can do.
Precisely. He provides the veneer of, scientific respectability and the royal connection. He's the front man for a project that's already kind of in motion.
So let's talk about that royal connection. He needs permission, right? You can't just sail off and claim land without a king's backing. In 1496, he gets the royal patent from King Henry VII.
The paperwork is crucial. Henry VIII issues a patent to Cabot and his 3 sons, Ludovico, Sebastian, and Sancto. It grants them the right to sail with 5 ships to all parts of the eastern, western, and northern sea.
I looked at the terms of this deal. It is very... Henry VII, he was known for being famously tight with money.
Right. Very tight. The king basically said, you have my permission to go, but you pay for everything yourself.
Good luck. Don't ask me for money.
Pretty much. However, the potential upside was huge. The king granted them a monopoly. Any trade from these new lands had to come through Bristol, and Cabot would get the profits.
And the king.
The king, of course, would take a 20% cut right off the top.
Classic venture capital deal. The king takes equity for 0 risk.
Yeah.
But if Cabot is broke and the king isn't paying, who funded the ships?
This is where the modern detective work by the Cabot Project really shines. For centuries, we just didn't know. But they followed the money trail, and it leads back to the Italians. Specifically, the Bardi family.
The Florentine bankers in London.
Yes. The Bardi family had a branch in London. Records show they gave Cabot 50 nobles, that's a unit of currency, to find the new land.
50 nobles? Is that a lot of money?
It wasn't enough to fund an entire expedition, but it was significant seed money. It gave him credibility. And he had another important backer, Father Giovanni Antonio de Carbonarius.
The people tax collector.
It sounds like a joke setup, doesn't it? A Venetian debtor, a Florentine banker, and a papal tax collector walk into a bar in Bristol.
Right.
But Carbonarius is a key figure. He was an Augustinian friar and a diplomat. Ruddock believed he was the one who actually got Cabot the audience with the king.
So it's this whole international coalition. You have Italian money, church influence, and English sailors.
Exactly. It's a multinational startup.
So they have the cash. They have the permit. They set sail in 1496. And they fail.
We often skip this part because it's a bit embarrassing. But yes, the 1496 voyage was a total disaster.
What happened?
He had 1 ship. He ran into bad weather. He was short on supplies. And the chronicles say the crew was confused.
Confused is a very polite way of saying mutinous, isn't it?
Probably. Or just terrified.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sailing into the complete unknown. Cabot decided to turn back before things got really ugly.
That must have been humiliating. He's been talking this big game about reaching the markets of Asia, and he comes back to Bristol with his tail between his legs.
The pressure for the next trip must have been immense.
It was make or break.
Absolutely. And that brings us to 1497.
The voyage that changed the map. Let's set the scene. May 1497. He has a ship called the Matthew. Now, when I hear exploration ship, I think of a galleon. But the Matthew was tiny, right?
Oh, it was tiny, just 50 tons. To give you a sense of scale, that's about 70 feet long. It's the size of a modern tugboat or a large yacht.
And he packs 18 to 20 men onto this tugboat for an Atlantic crossing.
It would have been incredibly cramped, smelly, constantly wet, and the crew list is pretty interesting. We know there were Bristol sailors, but also a Burgundian and a Genoese barber surgeon.
I love that job title, barber surgeon. I can give you a trim and amputate your gangrenous toe.
It was a necessary duality. You needed someone who could pull teeth, stitch wounds, and cut hair. There was no space on that boat for a specialist.
So they sail west. They go past Ireland out into the open Atlantic, and on June 24th, 1497, they spot land. Now, this is the subject of endless arguments in Canada, I gather. Where exactly did they land?
It is a huge debate. If you ask someone from Newfoundland, they will tell you with absolute certainty it was Cape Bonavista.
Okay.
If you ask someone from Nova Scotia, they will fight you and say it was Cape Breton Island. There is even a theory that he landed as far south as Maine.
So what does the actual evidence say?
The best evidence we have is that John Day letter we mentioned. John Day was a merchant writing to, we think, Christopher Columbus, reporting on Cabot's voyage.
Right.
He gives specific latitude details, and based on that analysis, the most likely landing is indeed somewhere in Newfoundland or the northern tip of Cape Breton.
So they hit land, they drop anchor. Do they storm the beach? Do they plant a flag? What happens?
They were extremely cautious. In fact, paranoid might be the better word. The sources say they landed only once.
Just once.
Just one time. And here is the detail that really sticks with me. They did not advance beyond the shooting distance of a crossbow.
That is such a vivid image. They get off the boat, but they stay within bowshot of the water of their escape route.
They were terrified. They didn't know what was in those woods. They'd found signs of life. A fire that had been recently burning, a human trail, some nets, a wooden tool for working with nets. but they didn't see any people.
It's like a horror movie setup. The campfire is still warm, but the campsite is empty.
It suggests the indigenous people, likely the Beothuk or the Micmac, were watching them. They were staying hidden, observing these strange visitors. And Cabot, for his part, didn't take any chances. He didn't try to make contact.
So what did he do? He sees these signs of life and...
He did the legal bare minimum. He took on fresh water. He raised the banner of St. Mark for Venice and the banner of the Pope, claiming the land for England and the church. And he got right back on the boat.
A touch and go?
Basically. They spent a few weeks sailing along the coast, mapping it from the safety of the water, observing the massive, massive schools of codfish, and then they turned around and headed home. They arrived back in Bristol on August 6th, 1497.
So he's back. He thinks he's found the outskirts of Asia. He rides to London to see the king. He presents his findings, and Henry VII gives him 10 pounds.
10 pounds.
I have to stop you there. 10 pounds. He found a new continent. He opened a door to the future of the British Empire, and he got 10 pounds.
It sounds incredibly insulting to our modern ears, doesn't it? But we have to contextualize the currency. 10 pounds was a lot of money for a regular person. It was about 2 years' wages for a skilled craftsman or a laborer.
Okay, so it's a decent bonus. But it's not exactly, I found America money.
No, it's not. It was a job well done cash gift. But the king did follow up. Later, Cabot was granted a pension of 20 pounds a year. Now, that was a proper gentleman's salary. It was enough to live very comfortably.
But there was a catch with that pension, wasn't there? Something in the fine print.
There's always a catch. The king didn't pay it from his own pocket. He ordered it to be paid out of the customs receipts of the port of Bristol.
Meaning Cabot had to go down to the docks and collect his own salary from the tax collectors.
Exactly. And we have records showing the customs officers in Bristol actually refused to pay him at first.
You're kidding.
No. He had to go back to the king and get a special warrant, a mercy, forcing them to hand over the cash.
Even the great admiral has to deal with local bureaucracy.
It really humanizes him. But despite the cash flow issues, for a few months, he was a superstar. The Milanese ambassador wrote that Cabot was being called the Great Admiral. He was dressing in silk. People were running after him in the streets like he's a rock star.
He had finally made it. The hustle paid off.
For a moment. But fame is fleeting. And this is where the story takes a dark turn. We move to 1498, the final voyage.
This was supposed to be the big one, right? The first trip was reconnaissance. This was business.
Correct. He had 5 ships this time. And crucially, the cargo manifests show they were carrying merchandise, cloth, lace points, and what the records just call trifles.
Trifles? What does that mean?
Small, cheap goods intended for trade. Trinkets. This tells us they fully expected to meet people this time. They weren't just mapping. They were planning to barter. They thought they were going to Japan or China to trade English wool for spices.
So they leave in May 1498. One ship gets damaged in a storm and limps into Ireland. The other 4 ships, they just vanish.
That has been the standard history for 500 years. Lost at sea, Cabot and his ships sail into the mist and are never seen again. A tragic end to a bold explorer.
This is where we have to talk about Owen Ruddock again, because she didn't buy the Lost at Sea story at all. This is the part of the deep dive that really blew my mind.
Owen Ruddock was a formidable scholar. I mean, she was the authority on the Bristol trade. She spent 35 years researching Cabot, and she claimed she had found evidence that completely overturned the entire narrative.
She claimed Cabot came back.
Yes. She argued that the 1498 voyage wasn't a failure. It was actually a partial success. She believed Cabot returned to England in the spring of 1500.
2 years later.
2 years later. She argued that the fleet explored the entire east coast of North America, all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay, and maybe even into the Caribbean.
That is huge. That would mean the English were poking around in Spanish territory way, way earlier than we thought.
Correct. And she pointed to a specific piece of evidence. The famous map by Juan de la Cosa. He was Columbus's cartographer.
Okay.
His map, dated around 1500, shows a coastline roughly corresponding to North America with English flags on it and a label that says, "Sea discovered by the English."
So the Spanish knew the English had been there.
Ruddock argued this map is the proof of Cabot's long coasting voyage of 1498.
But here's the tragedy. Ruddock died in 2005. She'd been working on a massive book that was going to reveal all of this proof. But in her will...
It's painful just to say it. In her will, she ordered all of her research notes to be destroyed. 70 bags of refuse. Decades of work. Shredded or burned.
But why? Why would a historian destroy her life's work?
We don't know for sure. Was it a kind of extreme perfectionism? She hadn't finished the book and didn't want anyone else to finish it for her? Was it a desire to control her legacy? It remains a complete mystery.
And it left modern scholars like Evan Jones and Margaret Condon with a massive headache.
A huge one. They have been trying to reconstruct her research from scratch. They are basically reverse engineering her discovery, trying to refine the documents she found.
And one of the things she claimed, and this is the most tantalizing what if, involves that friar we mentioned earlier, Father Carbonari's.
This is the settlement theory, and it's wild. Ruddock believes she found evidence that Father Carbonarius didn't just go for the ride. She believed he stayed behind.
Stayed behind in Newfoundland. In 1498.
Yes. She believed the friar and a small group of settlers founded a mission there. If she is right, that would be the first Christian settlement in North America. We are talking about a medieval church built in Canada over a century before the Pilgrims or Jamestown.
Is there any physical proof of this? I mean, have we found the church?
Archaeology is ongoing. There is a town in Newfoundland called Carbonear.
Carbonear.
Yeah.
Carbonaris.
The name sounds suspiciously similar, doesn't it? Archaeologists have been digging there since 2011. They have found Spanish coins from the period and evidence of early trade, but they haven't found the smoking gun, the foundations of a 1498 church. Not yet, anyway.
It just makes you wonder what was in those 70 bags of trash that Ruddock destroyed. Did she have the proof? The location?
We may never know.
But even without Ruddock's lost notes, the modern researchers did find something huge in the archives. They found a new hero, a guy named William Weston.
This is a great example of how history is always changing. Until, 2009, William Weston was just a footnote, a name on a list. But then Evan Jones found a letter that changed everything.
Oh, was he?
He was a Bristol merchant, a local boy. And the letter shows that King Henry VII suspended legal action against Weston because he was about to go to the Newfoundland.
Wait, suspended legal action? Was he in trouble too? It seems like everyone in this story is running from the law.
It seems exploring was a popular career choice for people with legal issues. But here's the key. Weston led an expedition in 1499. This makes him the first Englishman born and bred to lead an expedition to North America. Remember, Cabot was Italian. Weston was English.
And get this, the king paid him too.
He did. In 1500, Weston received a reward of £30.
30 pounds. That's 3 times what Cabot got for the initial discovery.
It implies that Weston achieved something really significant. Maybe he mapped more of the coast. Maybe he found better fishing grounds. Maybe he pushed further north, looking for that Northwest Passage. We don't know exactly what he did, but the king thought it was worth more than Cabot's first trip.
And yet, I have never heard of him until today. He's not on any postage stamps.
History tends to focus on the first. Cabot got the glory of the first landfall. Weston was just the guy who followed up. But his story proves that the Bristol merchants weren't just passive passengers on Cabot's ship. They were active, independent explorers.
So we have Cabot, the Italian hustler. We have the lost friar, potentially building a church. We have William Weston, the forgotten Englishman. And then there's one more character who just muddies all the waters, Sebastian Cabot.
Ah, the son.
Sebastian seems to be the reason a lot of this history is so confusing.
He really is. Sebastian was one of John's sons listed on that original patent. He went on to become a famous explorer in his own right, working for both Spain and England later in the 16th century. But he had a habit of, let's just say, spinning the narrative.
He took credit for his dad's work.
He often spoke about the voyages in a way that made it completely unclear whether he or his father was in charge. In some accounts he gave later in life, John Cabot almost disappears, and Sebastian becomes the hero of the 1497 voyage. He was just building his own personal brand.
The original influencer.
Exactly. It took historians centuries to untangle Sebastian's tall tales from the actual records of his father. For a long, long time, people thought Sebastian was the one who discovered North America.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the takeaway? We started with this man of many names, a debtor, an engineer, an explorer, who might have died at sea or might have come back. If we zoom out, John Cabot Giovanni Caboto, he's the bridge. He connects the old world of the Mediterranean spice trade, the world of Venice and caravans and slave markets, with the new Atlantic world. He represents that exact moment where the focus of Europe shifted from the east to the west.
And even though he didn't bring back spices or gold, he gave England its legal claim to the continent.
Without Cabot's voyage in 1497, the history of North America looks completely different. There is no British North America without that patent and that one landing. He laid the legal groundwork for everything that came later, the colonies, the trade, the English language in the New World. He failed to find Asia, but he accidentally founded the modern Atlantic economy.
And yet there is that lingering question, the final thought I want to leave everyone with. If Olwen Reddick was right,
If she really saw evidence that Father Carbonara built a mission, then somewhere in the rocky soil of Newfoundland, buried under 500 years of earth and moss, there might be the foundations of a medieval church, a Gothic church in Canada.
it gives you chills. It means history isn't finished. The answers might still be in the ground waiting for an archaeologist's trowel.
And if you are ever in Bristol or in Bonavista, you can go see the replica of the Matthew. You can stand on that tiny deck and imagine crossing the Atlantic with 18 other guys, a barber surgeon, and just no idea what was on the other side.
I highly recommend it. Just don't expect a private cabin.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.